Hi, this is Jonathan Mansky. We'll be starting in just a minute, so bear with us, and we'll see you in just a minute.
Thanks for coming. Oh, sorry, Judy.
You're okay. I just didn't want you to. Oh. That came to me right
Anywhere.
They're recording it.
There's no bad seats at the Mansky Event Center.
Great.
Really?
I'm proud. Yeah.
Great.
There you go.
Let's go away.
I didn't even know that was on video. My phone is like off. Hi, Tony.
Hey.
How are you?
Good.
This is my friend Jerry today. This is Judy and her husband Tony.
Hi, Tony. How are
Judy's financially female.
you? Do you want to
This for you.
Tony's
Jonathan?
some of our.
There you go. So are we ready to start, everybody?
Sure.
And then you want to say something and then do the video real quick? Okay. Well, Brad will tell you when. And
Are those good?
Green chilies.
Oh, yes, yeah, I think
To roll up.
What's in it?
I got quiet.
Oh. When I was a teenager, I was sitting there in the kitchen one Sunday morning with my dad, chewing a muffin with my mouth closed.
Yeah.
He's like, do you have to chew so loud?
You can hear me? I say that to my kids all the time.
With your mouth closed?
Yeah, with their mouth closed.
And you can still hear him.
Drives me crazy. So we always have music or some kind of sound on when we're eating. So we don't have to hear it.
I don't think I heard about that. You guys both still in the house?
Yeah.
All right, are we ready, Brad?
Yep.
All right.
Well, thank you for being here. This is exciting. I've been looking forward to this, and thank to Brad and all of his help and Jonathan for inviting us. And I imagine you saw that big banner when you came in the door. It said, "Happiest man in the world." Well, now you've seen him. That's me, and I can prove it because I have a banner. No. People ask me sometimes, "Well, what do you mean? What's this happy stuff?" And if you're the happiest guy, you ought to have some kind of answer like that. And I say, well, this world is full of alternatives. And eventually, those alternatives push us into positions of making choice. And lo and behold, out of the choices come consequences, right? And I've found that how you handle and manage those consequences that you set into motion by the alternatives that you chose, how you handle and reconcile really will determine the level of your happiness. And I've wanted to be here and share with you, and we're just going to have a relaxed time tonight. If it's okay, we're just kind of going to be informal. They've got me sitting down instead of standing up. And that's going to kind of set the stage for us all being a little bit informal. Tonight, what I want to do is to, if you thought I was going to just talk about Project Cure or something, what I really want to focus on tonight is the power of story. You have a story, and it's powerful. Brad has a story. I learned a little bit about it. It's powerful. And I have a story. So we're just going to kind of explore tonight a little bit. And what I want you to do is have your mind open and be thinking of, okay, if I were to be up there in the front sitting in that chair and we were going to do a little webinar thing, what would I say about my life? What were the alternatives that I faced? And what were the choices I made? And what were the consequences that were set into motion because of those choices that I made? And how's it all working out? So your story really is important. It's important to the people around you and in the influence circle that you have. My story kind of is, I like it. How's that? I grew up in a family. We had a wonderful family. My mom was a school teacher and educator for. I think they made her stop when she became 70. You know, but she loved it, and she helped my wife Anna Marie get into education, and but one thing about our early childhood that I remember so well was there were three boys. I was the youngest of the three boys, and then we had a little sister after that. So we were all given tasks to do before Mom got home from her teaching. Then she would arrive, and it's crazy because the thing she would do first, she would sit down at the piano, and she would play for about half an hour. I think back on that now, and I think, wow, what a setting, what a legacy. It calmed those boys down pretty good, you know, and we got busy and got our things done, but it also set her into a mood of laying aside the day and then taking on what was going to be in the evening. But after dinner, she did another interesting thing. We had lots of books around our house. And one of the things that she did of an evening, we would all head to the sofa and pile around Mom, and she would read us stories. Now that's pretty archaic, isn't it? But the power of story. Now I'm sure we've wrapped our kids' minds around stories, you know, that were available on TV or whatever. Those are powerful stories. The stories that I was subjected to and privileged to hear, I still saved. If you can imagine, I ended up with 2 of the books that our mom used to read to the boys. And inside of them, one of them says, to Jimmy, that was me from Daddy and Mother. And in this book, it's entitled Boys' Stories of Great Men. She took time to read, and James Hill, Andrew Carnegie, Pasteur, William Carey, Thomas Edison. Stories about boys who started out and were just boys, and then they actually believed that they could do something that would be positive. The other book was kind of like that. As another one that my mom and dad signed to it. Boys Who Made Good. Does it sound like brainwashing or something? But you know what? I go back now, and Charles Schwab, Thomas Lipton, Crawford Gorgas, the guy that discovered malaria and how to cure it. George Eastman, you know, there's Kodak Eastman. These stories were incredible, and I still remember them, and I still love them. We're gathered here tonight to celebrate a launching of a new book, and I'm so appreciative of Jonathan letting us do that, and the Simplicity and Sophistication book. In fact, these are just the samples, the advanced copies. The book won't actually be delivered until May 14th or 15th, something like that. But I want to not focus necessarily on that. I really want to talk about your story and my story, because I never thought that I would write a book. I would never put down on paper the story. My dad in our family was another interesting individual. He was way more talented than he knew what to do with the talent, and he was a writer. He was an artist, an oil painter, a chalk artist. He was a speaker. He wrote articles for the news. I mean, he was a talented guy. I remember one time he told us, now these are 3 pretty crazy boys. He said, I'll never be able to give you anything. But he said, I can show you how to get anything you want. And he said, find what somebody else has that you want, and then find what it is that they want more than what they have, and put the deal together, and everybody ends up better off. And he said, take what you have and make it into what you need or what you want. But then he would say, but you have to remember that everybody has to end up better off. So as far as I can remember, he only demonstrated that to us one time. He traded, as a matter of fact, for a beautiful New Zealand white rabbit that when he traded for it, it was extremely pregnant, as rabbits are wont to be. And sure enough, pretty soon, all these fuzzy little bunnies, irresistible, pink noses, pink eyes, little fuzzy ears. And one day he came out of his study and he said, okay, he said, go get your little red flyer wagon. So we did. And that was before they had weed eaters or hand clippers or something. And so he brought out of the kitchen 3 butcher knives. And he gives one each to his kids. And he said, I want you to go around now on all the edges of the grass, around the sidewalks, around the curbs, around everywhere. And I want you to clip the grass. Smart guy, huh? And he said, I want you to fill your little red radio flyer wagon up to this high with these fresh green grass clippings. So we did. Pretty soon we came back. He came out of his study. And he only did this one time. He said, all right. He took those little irresistible white fuzzy bunnies and he nestled them down in that fresh green grass. Now, do you have the picture in your mind? Red wagon, green grass, irresistible white little bunny rabbits nestled down in there. And one time he said, okay. And we started through the neighborhood. And we were kind of like Pied Piper. Because pretty soon all the kids started coming out of the neighborhood. And they would walk up and they all wanted to touch the ears. They wanted to, touch the nose. Pretty soon they wanted to hold them. And pretty soon they were saying, well, we want one. Can we have one? We said, sure, go get your mom. Now you got to remember, my dad was telling this story, building in this story. It would have been a good deal if he'd have waited and told us it's, after we got our MBA or something and said, hey, I think I can help you along the way or whatever. But this was before I went to school. And I'm the youngest of the 3. So you can see in your mind's eye, I'm behind the wagon, holding on and pushing, and we're going through the neighborhood. The first little fuzzy bunny rabbit, we traded for a whole marble collection. Now, remember, some of you remember the cat's eye shooters and the steelies? Oh, yeah. Okay, we had the whole thing, the whole collection. So we took that marble collection and one more little fuzzy bunny, and we traded it for a tricycle. We took the tricycle and another little bunny, and we traded it for one of those really neat scooters that they have the brake on the back, and really a sharp little thing. Okay, then we went on a little farther. Ultimately, ended up trading that for a beautiful and another rabbit for a beautiful Schwinn bike. Okay, we got back home, and he said, "Did you like what you got?" We said, "Yeah." Suddenly, we transformed something that was this, and now we have something really tangible. He said, "Was everybody better off today than when they started out? Was everybody happy?" We said, "Well, yeah, really happy." Well, it kind of sparked the thing of entrepreneurialism in us, and that's a harder word to say than it is to understand. Because all an entrepreneur does is take something of a lesser value in the economic system, take it out, and then put it back in at a higher value. Simple. Well, the three boys started trading for even stuff like automobiles. None of us had driver's licenses. So here we are. I remember one time, picked up the phone, called, said, "Hi, Mom, hi, Dad. We just traded for this neat Pontiac car, and it has nickel bars down the front and this Indian head that lights up when you turn the lights on, but we can't drive it home. Can you come and drive it home for us?" Well, that kind of stuck in our mind. The three of us got into businesses together even while we were in grade school, high school, college. And eventually then, we were born and raised in Idaho. And that was a great place. In fact, you may have already heard, but Anna Marie and I were born in the same hospital room. And we went to school together. In high school, I played sports. She was a cheerleader. So I'd make a good shot. She'd run out on the basketball floor of the pom-pom, "Go, Jackson!" And the truth of the matter is, she just kind of stayed on as my cheerleader. This is our 54th year of being married. We got married after the second grade. So we finally got to Colorado, and back in those early days of Story, you know, I'm hearing about Carnegie, and I'm hearing about Rockefeller, and I'm hearing about all that. And I really understood that I was to do well so that I could do good. Isn't that amazing how that kind of story kind of thing? And so it was really important for us to do well. So I determined when I was a little kid, that I was going to be a millionaire by the time I was 25. Seemed the thing you're supposed to do. And so we left Idaho because the wheels of commerce weren't going as fast as what we heard they were going in this place called Colorado. So we came to Colorado in the early 60s, and it was a wonderful time to come to Colorado. We got involved eventually in developing in the recreation ground and the ski areas. We had a wonderful experience in Winter Park, and we began to watch our efforts, because we had no problem with putting time and energy into it, and to be able to see then that began to come on, and then there were some people talking about this project that probably wouldn't make it, but there was a lot of interest in it. It's called Vail, and we were buying Vail at $126 an acre as sheep pasture. Well, something happened, because by the time I was 30, I was 16 times over what I thought I'd ever wanted to be, or ever at all in my whole life. And Anna Marie and I would talk, and I'm so grateful for having a companion that I grew up with and felt like I could talk to. Because we would talk, and I would say, "You know what? This isn't what it was cracked up to be. I'm standing in the middle of a stream, and it's coming to me, and it's like water, only it's money. And I don't know what it is that's so big about doing this. In fact, it's boring. I don't think I want to do this all the rest of my life. This is not fulfilling. Why are we doing this? You can never get enough. Because you go to a party and somebody else is talking about what they did, and so you got to go out and do another next big deal and another next big deal. And I told Anna Marie, I said, "We're chasing something we will never catch. And I'm 30 years old, and I don't want to do this all my life. How much is enough?" Well, that's dangerous talk. you got to be kind of careful about talking that way, because then we would say, "All right, so what do you do about it?" Now it's not just your expectations, but it's everybody else's expectations of what you're going to do in jet crowd and do this and do that, and it's kind of nice to drive the Bentleys, and so we finally got serious about it. We said, well, okay, how could you start over again? Well, you can't. How do you do that? And one day I was going down the freeway, and I told God, I said, you get me out of this squirrel cage, this rat race thing. You get me out of this. All I want to be is a simple man. I just want to be a simple man. And if you'll get me out of this and show me something that will be challenging and exciting, I promise I'll never use my talent and ability to earn and accumulate for myself. Well, that's one thing to say it in the car, and another then to think, do I go home and break this news? How do I do that? And how many couples? How would they handle it? Well, we decided to go ahead and come. We went to the edge, and then we kind of stepped over it. And it took us 2.5 years to give away what we did, but we gave all of our accumulation away. The apartment buildings, the development stuff, everything. The only thing I couldn't give away was my house. I tried to do it. We live in the same house we did 45 years ago. And I thought, okay, if we can't give that away, we will only become caretakers of it. We'll see to it that the snow's plowed and the flowers are planted. But if you want us to do whatever, that's okay with us. That was the best business deal I ever made in all my life, because it freed me up. And so what do you do when you don't go down to Jackson Brothers Investment Company anymore? And people are saying, what are you doing? And pretty soon you're saying, well, who am I? Because we have kind of a tendency to build in our own personal worth with what we do, and that becomes who we are. And so after having given away, and you can hurt folks giving it away, so we wanted to be careful and do it right. So I shut the gates to our house in Evergreen, and I started to write. And I wrote a book entitled "What You Gonna Do with What You Got." And from that, an interesting thing happened. That was in 1982. It was very successful, and I had a lot of. I think we trained over 10,000 people to take the concepts of stewardship and stuff to their denominations, their churches, their clubs, or whatever. And then one day I got a call that led me ultimately to doing international economic consulting in these developing countries. I went to Africa first, and then went to Quito, Ecuador, and Lima, Peru, and Caracas, Venezuela. And then for 3.5 years, I worked directly with President Sarney and his chief economist, Antonio Bastelar, on the repayment of Brazil's debt to U.S. banks. That was back in the days when they were running 3,000% inflation. So they would try to get in the system. There was nothing to ever pay it back. And I'm thinking, why am I going in this circuitous route here and meeting and getting to meet the presidents and all of these people and stuff? And in Brazil, I found out. And had I not taken it one step at a time, I don't know. But when I was in Brazil, a guy found me. His name was Geraldo Neves. Came all the way to Belo Horizonte, and he said, "Jackson, do you ever get up to Rio?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, in an area called Mesquite," he said, there's an area where there is no medical help at all. And he said, "We have purchased an old house and remodeled it and tried to make it into a clinic. And I'm trying to get people out of Rio to volunteer and come and help me in my clinic." He said, "Would you just come and see what I'm doing?" I said, "Sure." So next time I was in Rio, we went out to Mesquite. And here are all of these people, old ladies in the shade leaning up against the building next to it, and moms holding babies. They're crying. And I walked into the first, well, it would have been the old bedroom. on the right, and it was painted blue, and it had posters of babies on the walls, and then in the corner it had a kind of an old orange crate thing, and had a baby scale, rusty old baby scale, sitting on it. That was his pediatrics ward. That's all he had. And I walked into what had been the kitchen, and here he had a cot in there, and an empty oxygen tank, a green tank, and then over on one side he had a metal cabinet with a glass front and rewrapped dirty old bandages in there. And I said, Dr. Neves, I said, explain to me, because he was doing procedures in there. And I said, I don't understand it. Doesn't anybody help you? These people think that you're going to help them. You can't help them. Doesn't anybody help you? And he looked at me and said, well, Dr. Jackson, you're the economista. You should know that at 3,000% inflation, even if we had crusados, we could not buy something from you because the money would go out of our country and that'd be more hyperinflation. We're already running 3,000% inflation. So no, we can't. I said, the government doesn't help you? He said, the government isn't strong enough with their infrastructure to help us at all. We're just trying to do the best we can with what we've got. And I looked at him and I said, I don't know anything about medicine. I don't know even what I'm talking about. But I think I could go back to Colorado and find some donations for you. But I said, you have to, I've been in Brazil now for 3.5 years. You'll have to guarantee me that it won't get in the black market. I've been here long enough and know the corruption. I don't want to be part of your problem. I want to be part of your solution. And he looked at me kind of funny. He had a little grin in the corner of his mouth, and he said, well, you are working with President Sarney in Brasilia. Why don't you go back and get guarantee from him? I go, oh man, this is getting complicated. So I did. I went back and met with Mr. Corbellini, who was the Minister of Health. And he said, Jackson, if you will bring things into Brazil, I will see to it that you get it through customs with no problem. And I will give you a key to a storage area on the University Medical School campus. And you put it in there, and then you go determine where it needs to be placed. I stood up, I shook his hand. I said, Mr. Corbellini, I said, that's all I need to know. Thank you. And I got back on the airplane, and I put my head in my hands, and I thought, oh no, what have I just done to my life? I don't know. I don't know anybody in the medical. I'm an economist. I know nothing about medicine. And I got back here, and some of you may remember the Crestwood restaurant in Littleton, downtown Littleton, Little Boulevard. And I called a bunch of my friends, and we met down there, and I explained to them. I tried to describe what Dr. Neves' clinic looked like. And I said, I'm going to help this guy, but I don't know anything. Somebody here around this lunch table has a telephone number or a name or some connection. I don't mind working hard, but I need some help. I'm in way over my head. And the guy across the table from me, Greg Lowe, said, well, Jim, yeah. He said, my partner Pete and I own diagnostic marketing out here in Quincy. He said, that's what we do. He said, we have to bid on supplying all of these hospitals and clinics every year. Sometimes we get the bid, sometimes we don't. So we have to have oversupply. And he said, come down and see if we can help you. So I went down there, and we started walking down the aisleways of their warehouse, and they started pulling off brand new stuff and putting it on pallets and having the people take it back out by the warehouse door. They pulled off over $50,000 worth of brand new medical supplies. And he said, okay, Jackson, you go back to Brazil and see how many lives you can save. Well, I got in my car and I raced up I-70 to Evergreen. And I told Anna Marie, something's happening. This is not usual. This is not normal. $50,000 worth, and they just gave it to me and told me to go see how many lives I could save with it. So we got our old Dodge truck, and we headed back to their warehouse, and we started moving the stuff. and my garage in Evergreen was my first warehouse. My first volunteer was Anna Marie. But I saw something happen when we actually delivered a container load. Now, Dr. Neves, we inundated him right away with a 40-foot container, and I started then working with the medical hospital in Campinas in São Paulo, and to see what happened. Dr. Vilmar Trombeta, the head of the whole hospital on the campus, said to me after a little later, he said, "Jackson, you have brought millions of dollars worth of medical things to our campus, to our university hospital." And he said, "You know what you brought most?" He said, "You brought hope." And he said, "You actually changed our staff meetings." Because the only thing they could agree on in their staff meetings before was that they didn't have any money, couldn't get anything, therefore they couldn't do anything. And he said, now they're saying, somebody has faith in us, somebody has confidence. They're bringing all of this to us. Then we can help figure out our own problems too. Well, I thought that we would just go in Brazil. That would be all the farther. I never dreamed. And then they had Hurricane Mitch or whatever it was, and the people from Panama and Honduras. And anyway, they showed up and they said, "Well, why are you helping the Brazilians? Why don't you help us? What do you have against us?" I don't have anything against you. I will help you. I will help you. And we started expanding out in Central America, and then more in South America. And then 1991 came along when the Soviet Union collapsed, and USAID came to me and said, "Jackson, you're the only one who can get this good equipment and the supplies and stuff. We've given everything away from our warehouses in Frankfurt and everything to try to help the Soviets rebuild their medical system. Why don't you come and join us? We will see to it that the transportation is all covered, and if you'll donate the stuff, we want to build a model between St. Petersburg all along the Volga River and that corridor up to Moscow." And we did. We started rebuilding hospitals and pumping millions of dollars in there. Well, eventually that led into every one of the republics, after the Soviet republics across the Caspian Sea, into Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, all the Stan brothers. And and I have to tell you, because this is the thing of the story that still I have a hard time communicating it, because it hasn't stopped. Our first load went out in 1987. We are now the largest handlers of donated medical supplies in the whole world. We ship into 130 countries. We have 16,000 volunteers. Our goal is to have 25 big warehouses like we have out here, 25 warehouses around the country. Now, one of the things, and you'll see how this little common thread of story, because it's so important. When I started traveling and Project Cure started expanding, I thought, I need to document everything. This is nobody's going to believe you. I need to validate the fact that there is a need, viable need in all these countries, in developing countries. They don't have it, and people are dying because of a lack of a IV tube or a starting kit. That's it. $1.25, or even a pair of latex gloves. They won't operate without it in an area where there's HIV/AIDS, so the person just dies because it's in an area. And when I saw that begin to happen, I wanted to validate it. And so I started writing very carefully. I wrote a journal. Everything. I can tell you now all the names of all the people, all the heads of the hospitals, probably a lot of the department heads. And it was crazy, because I have to show you this. I had a goal. And that goal was, before that airplane landed and the wheels on the tarmac at Old Stapleton, my goal was to have that whole trip documented. So this is here's what one trip would like. This is to Vietnam. and the pictures, the albums, validating every need, validating all the supplies, validating good, wonderful ministers of health and people in the hospital and what the conditions were. In Vietnam, I found there were 3 people in a bed. I mean, and people all over the floor, and they didn't have anything. And we begin to go in places like Vietnam and almost every square inch of Vietnam, and then Cambodia, and then Laos, and then China, and by the time I got, if you had been in those airplanes at that time during those 25, 30 years, I'd be the guy up in the middle of the economy section with the light on in the night, and I'm writing, okay? Because what I would do is carry one of these little pads with me all the time in my pocket, okay? So when the Minister of Health was taking me around to the district hospitals on that, I was always writing, always writing. So then I would get back to, well, I've got pictures of being in the tents in Serengeti out in the middle of and holding a lantern trying to finish my journals. Because I knew by the time I got home, I had to have it done, because I don't know about your memory, but to keep the keen edge of detail, I couldn't wait longer about 3 days, or I started losing it. And I knew if I got back to the office, and here I was in those days, the first 10 years, totally responsible for trying to go procure all the supplies and get a warehouse and get volunteers and go to Coors and tell them they ought to give me a forklift and all those crazy things, and so I knew if I didn't get it done. And the part of the story that I would like to encourage you with today also is, it's really a good thing to journalize. It really is, because the good things that you need to have as reference points later, and it will go back and encourage you, or things that you would like to adjust, and you see a reference point, driving a stake so you know where you are and where to come back to and things. And so this is book 9 and part of 10. Okay, and this is what it would look like. Here's Ghana, Senegal, Mauritania, Burkina Faso, London, January 25th through February 13th of 2000. Okay. And this is what one of the journals would look like. And I would hand do them, because most of the places wasn't any electricity. Then I had a lady who was a volunteer who really felt it was her kind of mission. She would take these and then put them on the old floppy disk and get them recorded digitally. And so what was this would end up being this, a regular journal, along with all the photos. And so it became, here's one on Cameroon. We started Project Cure in London with the help of Baroness Caroline Cox, the head of the House of Lords. Romania. I stopped counting the number of countries when I'd been there and passed 150. I don't know how for sure how many countries I've been to, but I know I've been to 150 of them. But that's what happened on, and I'm really opening up and sharing with you, because I think there's some magic in dignifying your story. Your friends need to know. Your family needs to know. You need to know to crystallize what it is that's your story. And so I remember here I had these notebooks in our house. If you were to line them up, the photograph albums would go here and then bend clear there. And now we're trying to get them in the clouds and all that kind of stuff. But same with these, and I was having some kind of the places the Project Cure needed to go were the hot spots of the world: the Afghanistans, the Iraqs, Russia, places that were not necessarily comfortable to go. India, every country in Africa except one or two, but basically the hot spots of the world. And I had several close calls that got me to thinking. These African airlines, nobody really maintains them. I remember being in Somalia. I flew into Hargeisa, and I actually got back out of the airplane and got my camera and took a picture just of the landing gear, the tires. I think somebody told me there were 7 plies. Well, you can count 5 of them already, and I'm thinking, nobody's going to know what to do with all those journals. I don't even know, because I was going 250 days a year, be gone, one place to another. And the biggest problem was temptation. If you're in Senegal, you may as well go to Burkina Faso, and you may as well come down into Cameroon. You may as well, why come all the way back and then have to come back again from the U.S.? So your temptation was to stay longer, because it made economic sense. Stay there and do it while you're there. And so I got into some situations in northern India where it was not a good deal. It was a coup, and then I was in we started helping out Israel when all of their refugees started coming back after Russia shut down. So they had 750,000 immigrants come back and hit that healthcare system in Israel. And interesting, I don't usually say much about it, but the interesting thing is they put Anna Marie and myself on the board of the largest Asa Fairfay hospital in Israel, in Tel Aviv. And they asked me, they said, would you ever consider helping the Palestinians? And I said, pardon me? and they said, no, we're in an interesting thing. We want to help them, and they don't want us to help them. But when the kids come and throw Molotov cocktails and try to blow up our tanks and stuff, we try to use rubber bullets to shoot them. But they end up with a lot of paraplegics and quadriplegics. Would Project Cure agree to go in and help build rehabilitation? I mean, unheard of stuff. This is just what's happened. Well, I got into a dicey area where I was staying in a Palestinian home, and the Israelis came back into Ramallah to take Ramallah. So here I am, they're shooting right over my. I go, oh, I'm at the wrong place at the wrong time. But in thinking about it, I thought I better take some time. And so in 2005, I took a little time off, and I read through all of these journals. And I would come down the stairs, and I'd be crying, and I'd say, I've never told this story to anybody, and it's and I'm thinking, I need to do something. So we decided, well, we probably better write a book, get it, kind of formalized, and that's how The Happiest Man in the World came about. It's a story, a little bit of my childhood and our business dealings, and then the getting into Project Cure, and really this story beginning of Project Cure, and the exciting things that happened. But I didn't get to tell very many of my stories. I mean, 6,000 pages of journaling of just stories and stuff. So we did get this one published, and then from that, people started coming back saying, oh, we want to hear more of your stories. We want more of your stories. So that's last year. Love and Common Sense was published, and it's just short stories. I tried to keep all the stories 1,500 words or less, so you can read them maybe 3-4 pages all. And so now I've got plumbers and people all around the country saying, well, yeah, I read one of those every morning while I'm having my coffee, and then that sets me out for the day. And so then when this started going, then they said the same thing. And this has 70 stories from all around the world that really are unique. And so we went ahead and this year, just now, this hasn't been released yet, but we have a copy of the first ones, and 70 more stories. But and then Anna Marie and I, Anna Marie, why don't you stand up? I just am so proud of this girl. She has her PhD from DU and was a career educator, taught at 3 different universities. And then one time, I could only take her on my trips. I've taken her now to 48 countries, but I could only take her in the summer times. And so we were bumping along in the back of a van in Vietnam somewhere up in the Da Nang area, and in the back of the van, and these Vietnamese guys were all chattering, you know, in Vietnamese. And she asked me, she said, "Is this the way it always is when you travel?" And I said, "Well, yeah." She said, "But they haven't talked to you for the last 2.5 hours. And we don't know where we are. We don't know where we're going to sleep. We don't know where we're going to go. We don't know when we're going to get back. We know nothing." She said, "It's always this way." And I said, "Well, yeah." And she said, "Oh, that must be awfully lonely." I said, "We got a job to do, girl." Anyway, I didn't know she had her own her areas and gifted, talented, and communication as a PhD. She had her own school up at Evergreen called the Academy for Excellence. So when we came home from that trip, she got notice out that there were no more enrollments after the end of the year, and then she started helping me and traveling with me. And also this year we've published a book called Historical Heartbeat: The First 25 Years of Project Cure. And in here, I tried to think, okay, now we've had 25 years. What made Project Cure different? Why are we still existing when so many organizations and mom and pop groups just, you know, they come and they're gone. They can't make work. What has happened? So we put distinctives that I shared with our board and what I felt were distinctives, and then the whole timeline of where we started, where we went, all of the places. We now have big warehouses. This is our warehouse here in Centennial, and we have warehouses like this in Nashville, in Houston, in Phoenix, in Chicago. Our goal is to have 25 of those like that. Now we have 14. We have 5 of the others, and 14 what we call our collection warehouses, where we don't do all the barcoding and all of that kind of stuff, and the heavy volunteer, but we plan to grow those. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us in Project Cure. What I've asked, so that you can kind of, I want to be so transparent with you that if you have any questions or anything else, I'd love to make myself vulnerable to any part of our organization, whatever pops in your mind. But I thought before we go any farther, I've asked Jonathan to pick out one of his favorite stories out of this, because he's had this whole year now, so he better have read it. And Jonathan, come down here and take my place and tell us about one of your favorite stories out of it.
So they sent me an email yesterday asking me to do this, and I immediately knew which story I'd pick because I've referenced this story so many different times working with my clients, and it's called "What Would It Take?" And I'll skip the first part, but Dr. Jackson got into a conversation with the lady on the airplane, and Sherry, you said you enjoy observing people as you travel. What have you observed so far on this trip? The thing that impressed me this morning at the airport, Sherry confided, was a high percentage of folks who looked terribly unhappy. And I suppose I look as disgruntled as the rest of them, except for this pleasant conversation. My own life is sort of bummed. It's beginning to dawn on me that I am running faster and faster, chasing something that I can't really identify for certain. I'm not catching whatever it is I'm running after. Is it possible, I asked, that someone or something, or perhaps the entire culture, has instructed all of us that we should be in hot pursuit every day and spend our energy to the last dregs to lay hold of whatever it is that we are all supposed to be chasing? I went on, Sherry, don't answer this unless you feel comfortable doing so. What was it that made you get up this morning and go through the hassle and security procedures to get on this flight? She studied her hands that were folded in her lap and pensively mumbled something about economic security and happiness. This is none of my business, I replied, but I'm very curious. Just how much economic security would it take to make you really happy? Her reply came surprisingly quickly. About twice as much as I'm presently making. Then she grinned sheepishly. Yeah, I think more money, about twice as much, would give me a good shot at personal security. That would be enough to make me happy. The captain came on the intercom with some announcements, and we put a bookmark in our conversation, but Sherry wasn't through talking. You know something, Sherry asked. It just hit me. I am presently making twice as much as I was making 2 years ago, and now I'm back into the same emotional cycle, saying the same things over again. I need about twice as much as I'm making to make me secure and happy. Who keeps moving the bar up on the high jump standards? We laughed together. Sherry, I continued, just one more question from a fellow traveler. If money were not the issue, what would your list look like of what would really make you happy? I want to feel worthwhile, she confided. I would want to be involved in some worthwhile things. I would want to personally enjoy some love, some fun, some friendship, and respect from my family and a few other people. And I guess I would like to leave some kind of legacy when I'm gone. Then Sherry said something absolutely brilliant. You know, none of those things I just listed are available on the open market or on eBay. Therefore, I guess if something isn't priced on the market, then you can't buy it. And if you can't buy it with money, then perhaps just possessing twice as much of the stuff called money isn't the answer. I guess I've been looking for happiness in the wrong places. What a wonderful observation I've made today. And I love that story because so often this is what we're doing. We're telling ourselves a story of, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I double my income. I'll be happy when I lose 20 pounds. I'll be happy when this changes, when that changes. And it sounds logical, like, oh, well, of course, but no, because you'll still be you, the person who's practiced being grumpy and dissatisfied, and you'll just change the target. And we do this so often instead of understanding that we have everything we need right now to be happy, to compete with him for being the happiest man or woman in the world. You know, and it's not about those things. I mean, those things are great. There's nothing wrong with having them, but happiness is within. And I hear it all the time, you know, I just need to make more money and then I'll be happy. No, you won't, just like that lady. So I've shared that story with so many clients. So thanks.
Don't run away yet, because I love and appreciate this guy so much, and he's helped Project Cure and help be a support and a boost to us and our days. I want to give you this book before it even gets out of.
Wow. Well, thank you.
That's one that's
Thank
fresh
you.
off the press.
I know what I'll be reading before I go to bed tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend.
That.
Thank you. And while we're doing this, I want to, because I'm going to call Anna Marie in here and put her on the spot in a minute. But for all Brad is doing, I want to give him one of our books on the happiest man in the world. His story is great too. Congratulations on your story. Anna Marie, you've had time. You've helped me edit all that stuff. So why don't you come and share a story out of the new one that you like?
Well, that's interesting because I like all of them.
Oh,
How long would you
good
like
answer.
to stay tonight? I like all of them in all three books. So there you go. One of the fascinating things about his stories, and I probably am his biggest cheerleader. Here I go. One of the things I need to tell you is the Happy Man book received a Gold Evie Award in 2013 for autobiography memoir. And the Love and Common Sense book received 3 awards in 2013. A gold Evie for travel, a silver Evie for the cover design, and a bronze Evie for nonfiction. So I think that's pretty cool. This one's going up for awards also. But one of the fascinating things that I find every time he writes a story is it is a little nugget that came out of 6,000 pages. He went through and made a synopsis of each one of those journals because they're hard to get your arms around. There's a lot in there. And I have joined him. I have read every page of them, cried right along with him, and have been really, really interested in the little tidbits of wisdom that he would be writing, and all of a sudden this, whoa, it would get you. But it was who he was at the moment and what he was seeing at the moment. Well, he would go through and take a little bit of an idea, and that became the stories that are in these books. And I find it so fascinating because you'll be reading along and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, he gets you again with a thought that you can take and carry with you and use in your life wherever you are and whatever you're doing. I'm not sure I can see this. the light. I would give it a try.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, you are a champion. There we go. This is chapter 35 in Love, Simplicity and Sophistication. It's called Gratefulness. You can tell right there there's a lesson coming, can't you? A certain excitement and energy gusts down through our Colorado mountain canyon as October morphs into November. The golden aspen leaves of autumn skip along the surface. Right. Skip along the surface of the high-altitude stream in lively funnels of brilliance. The late afternoon air takes on a crisp and moist character as the nighttime dustings of snow begin to cover the highest mountain peaks. The gorgeous summer flowers are but pleasant memories. Picnic umbrellas have been put away, and the bright yellow snowplow blade has been methodically reattached to the ATV. It's fall in Colorado. I love the fall. I love November because I'm still the kid who loves Thanksgiving. I've adopted throughout my life, I've embraced the idea that it isn't happiness that makes us grateful, but gratefulness that makes us happy. Gratefulness is being thankful for what we've received from others. It's not only feeling or expression, it's an attitude. When we receive something and express our appreciation for it, something happens deep within our souls. Multiple studies have shown that people enjoy some pretty significant health benefits from cultivating an attitude of gratitude. Among the benefits are happier disposition, less depression and stress, better overall immunity and health, and more satisfaction with life. That sounds like something I'd like to have, don't you? It appears that grateful people also have an edge on personal growth, have better coping and planning skills, and are more likely to seek out support in difficult times. The grateful people I've observed over years seem to have a clearer purpose in life and become broader spirit of self-acceptance as well. Well, I'm going to skip a lot of this because this one happens to be a little bit longer. It's 4 pages. But he goes on to talk about Cicero. Gratitude, quote, gratitude is not only the greatest of all virtues, but the parent of all others. And he documents that with backup from the 3 major religions of the world and how Christianity talks about gratitude, the Hebrew worldview of gratitude, and also how the Quran teaches Muslims to express gratitude. But one of the most unforgettable lessons I learned about the inner need to express gratitude occurred when Anna Marie and I visited Brazil. And he goes on to describe walking through the hospital and seeing a hospital where Dr. Amaral and his wife had set up a clinic where they would do surgeries on mostly children and teenagers. He says, there is no way to really prepare ourselves for such an experience. I was invited to sit right next to Dr. Amaral during the examination and the consultation. Viewing each of the nearly 20 patients was enough to make me cry out. It was very traumatic. The patients ranged from just a few weeks old to their teens. Most of the mothers and patients had perhaps traveled hundreds of miles to get to the hospital that day. They were poor mothers who were typically single, unemployed, indigent, and very frightened. The first little girl, age 8, had already undergone 10 operations. She still had many, many operations to go. Her hands were completely fused together with her arms in a clump. Many surgeries had already been done on her hands to separate the clumps into fingers and thumbs. Her feet were the same way, but it was her head that was the most severely deformed. The next operation was to include a complete cranial restructuring to relieve the constriction on the brain that was causing behavioral and motor problems. But one mother, who looked very poor, brought in her daughter Sylvia, who was wearing a large hat, jeans, and a t-shirt. Sylvia appeared to be in her early teens. She had many congenital deformities of the face, head, and thorax area. She had received several earlier surgeries, and only recently had Dr. Amaral been able to complete a very major surgery. The girl's mother, an older lady, was sitting next to me. As the doctors began discussing Sylvia's case, she turned, gripped my forearms, and began speaking directly to me. Her eyes were like sparkling flames, and her words flowed in a steady stream of white, hot emotion. I could literally feel the intensity of the emotion build as her speech rose to a crescendo, and her grip on my arm tightened. Neither her emotion nor her flow of speech slowed down a bit when they informed her that I couldn't understand Portuguese. She just kept on talking. They said she was telling me that her daughter had been deformed and ugly, but Dr. Amaral had made her pretty. She couldn't stop praising the doctor and thanking him. No one could quiet her. I took her by the hand and just smiled. She needed to express her feelings, and she wasn't concerned whether I spoke English, French, Chinese, or Pig Latin. She needed someone to listen as she expressed her gratefulness, appreciation, and thanksgiving. Her precious daughter was now so beautiful. And with every word of recognition and praise on the uncontrollable flood of happiness and deep joy washed over her. I learned a spiritual lesson from that sweet Brazilian lady. Men in the room were embarrassed for the woman, but I simply stood up as she left and kissed her, first on the one cheek and then on the other. I had just experienced the unstoppable power of praise and the satisfying gift of gratefulness. And I love the way that he brings that intimacy and the facts. He can't fudge on the facts because he has all of the journals. So I'm willing to answer any questions, but
Yeah, well, let's open it up. If you have
thanks.
any questions for Anna Marie.
How did you deal with him being gone 200 days of the year or more?
Well, that's a good question. He was gone, and my goal was to keep everything stable at home, give him a very comfortable, welcoming place when he came home, and he knew every mile he traveled that I was there believing in him encouraging him, supporting what he was doing. I understood what he was doing. I had traveled enough that I knew where he was. And it was, you say, well, yes, but that's all idealistic. What did you really do? Right?
Yeah.
I kept really busy. That was when I was teaching. I had my own school. I was teaching in 3 universities, and I was teaching in the public system at the same time. So I kept really busy.
Yeah.
But I wanted his home to be his palace that he came home to, so that he was always there welcoming.
Were you worried?
Interesting that you would ask that. In 1993, I believe it was, something like that, he had received his first invitation to North Korea. And the State Department had told him that there were no guarantees. No one was there. Swiss couldn't help him. In fact, it was a little more raw than that. They said, you're on your own. If they take you hostage, there's no one there to help you. So we were on the way to the airport, and we were going down I-70, and I asked him, are you frightened? He said, no, not really. He said, if it's my time, it won't matter whether I'm in my bed at home. And if it's not my time, there is nothing anyone in North Korea can do. And I said, okay, if that's how you feel about it, I can handle it. And I was asked that many times. Are you worried? When I got a call from Nigeria, not a favorite place, the only thing I got on the phone was, I'm in Nigeria, I'm in trouble, and the phone went dead. That's a little frightening.
Yeah.
And then one other time he was flying into Ethiopia, and I knew that he was going into Addis Ababa and then on to his next destination. And one of the boys, I don't remember which one it was, called and said, Mom, where's Dad? And I said, well, he just would have landed. I had him tracked around the world. I knew just about where he was going to be at what time. I said, he should have just landed in Addis Ababa. Well, I know, Mom, but where is he? There's been a plane crash. And so we did some quick research and found out that he had gotten off in Addis. The plane had gone on to, when it took off, was commandeered and crashed. So yeah, we had some tense moments, or the day that he called in the middle of the night and the phone rang and I grabbed it and he said, I'm in a military lockdown in Palestine. I'll be home when I can get out. We had some fun times.
Yeah.
Was there always communication between the two?
No, there were many times when I would see him at the airport, and we had an agreement that he would call me when he got into one of the major cities on his way back. So he might be gone 2 or 3 weeks, and I wouldn't hear from him.
Oh, wow.
He was to call me from a European country, Frankfurt, Paris, London, someplace where he landed coming in. And we had an agreement that he had about 24 hours from the time I knew he was to land in one of those cities before I started making phone calls. But that became a principle of our needs assessments when I began putting together the needs assessment manual, that anyone who's out doing a needs assessment for Project Cure has to keep in contact, and within 24 hours has to contact the main office so that we know their feet are in safe ground. And I still do that for Doug. I'll call him and say, let me know when you're back in one of the airports. So.
A lot of sleepless nights.
Yes.
If you would, if it's not too personal, talk about your faith and belief in God and how that may have supported you through all this.
Oh, that's never too personal. I have a very strong faith, and I am very convinced that God is in control. And because I am so convinced, the very core of myself, that God is in control, I know that whatever happens is going to be okay because He's going to work it out. And I do hang on to the fact that I know God is in control.
You know, I sit here and I believe that as well. That when I heard Jim say that, and the two of you in the back of the Jeep, you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going, you don't speak the language, you're in a dangerous country.
Yes.
That is truly putting it to the test.
Well, you know, yes, it is. We were actually in Nigeria, and we were doing all the things the State Department tells you not to do. You know, you're not supposed to get into a city taxi cab in some of these countries, particularly one that is not does not have law or isn't like what we would consider to be safe. And we got into kind of a dicey situation in one of the needs assessments. So our sponsor decides that we should get on back to the Capitol, and they call a city taxi cab and put this young man with us in the taxi cab and gave him some money to pay the taxi cab driver. And we head off across Nigeria, 7.5 hours in this very hot, very, there's no law in Nigeria. So they even take the handles off the inside of the taxi cab doors so you can't get out and not pay. So you can't roll the windows down. I mean, you're there. You're there for the trip. And we were rolling along, and we'd come to, what do you call them?
Roadblock?
Roadblock. And instead of this taxi cab slowing down, he just went barreling right through. And just flipped to the bottom, to the metal. We were headed for the capital city. So we'd been going along, and I looked down at my hand, and I thought, I'm getting a little bit dehydrated. You know how your skin kind of takes on a different texture? I had a half a bottle of water and a kind of a bar, a power bar in my purse. Well, in that heat, power bar does strange things. So I took the power bar out, and I took the wrapper off as best I could. We divided the power bar. He had a half, and I had a half, and we shared the rest of the bottle of water. And I looked at him, and I said, at least we're together. So, yeah, it got a little dicey at times. It sure did. But there was a real peace. I never was truly afraid. I really had a peace about it. For one thing, I knew I was with Him, and I knew God was in control. Anything else?
Did you always feel like that, or was it just after the Project Cure stuff started coming to fruition where you guys really firmly believed that you were led to do this, or did you have that kind of faith before Project Cure came about?
I would say I've had that faith since I was a child. I've had that faith for a long time, and it has become stronger and stronger and stronger. I fell in love with that guy when he was, when I was a child.
in the Happy Man book, we have a section of pictures in there. And we have our maybe baby picture, whatever, taken in the same photography studio in our little hometown.
That's cool.
She was the cute little Johnson girl. I remember her distinctly when she was in the second grade, and her mom always combed her hair in these Shirley Temple ringlets. Yeah. And so when she walked, they go boing, boing, boing. Well, that's cool. But I would hate to think, I mean, I'm not sure how to handle if God hadn't given me her as a gift, because what we had to do required it. And we would kiss goodbye at the airport, and there was a real high probability, as far as probability is concerned, that we wouldn't see each other again.
He didn't know for a long time, but I would take him to the airport early in the morning before I'd have to go to school and teach. So most of his trips started from Denver very, very early. But I'd let him out of the car. I mean, he'd get out of the car, and I'd go around the back. He'd get his suitcase out, and I'd kiss him goodbye. And then he would go start into the airport. And I would sit and watch as far as I could see until I couldn't see the back of his shoulders anymore, because I thought that might be the last time I ever see him. And it was real. It was real. So.
But it's been amazing. The miracle part of Project Cure is that for all of those years, I've never had malaria, never had dengue fever, and then I had two more trips to make in 07, and I had to go to Togo, to Lomé, the capital of Togo, and then I had to come back home, and then I had to go again to Douala, Cameroon, before I could stop for Christmas. So I flew into Lomé, and we did some district hospitals around the capital there, and then the Minister of Health and I and another couple of guys headed in a SUV all the way to the Burkina Faso border, Ouagadougou, and then started zigzagging all the way down, catching all the district hospitals to do the needs assessment. Because Project Cure won't send anything anywhere unless we've done a full 10-page needs assessment, which means we walk the halls and we talk to the department heads and we find out what it is. And every one of those loads that goes out of Project Cure is custom made for that place. So anyway, we started going zigzagging back, and I used to have to stay in the villages and eating whatever in the cauldron, and I was always really careful about my water. I had REI pump that had iodine and stuff, and so, and because a lot of times in Africa I would end up having to, you whatever's captured off that comes off the roof of the hut, into a 55-gallon drum. But when I got back to Lomé, I was one sick cookie, and by the time I got home, I went to our primary physician, and eventually they got me to the infectious disease team, wonderful team right here in Denver, and they told me, they said, we're not culturing what it is. We have no idea what it is. And eventually, though, they found that it was a mutant strain of African E. coli that was attacking all my system. And they said, you don't have very much time left. It is shutting your body system down. And anyway, these guys got to work, and they'd given me all of this stuff, and a couple of the antibiotics I really reacted to, so I had to get the Benadryl out to get me back to breathing. And then they finally put a PICC line in my arm and run down directly into my heart for 2.5 weeks. They really pumped some massive stuff right directly into my heart, and I started recovering. But I've thought about that, and in those long airplane rides, I had to determine, in fact, to find when the Winston Crown has agreed, by the way, to print all of my journals just like they are. So I don't know what that's going to look like, but in there, if you were reading, you'd find out that I didn't have any idea what was going to happen, and they said, well, you better take it. Well, they finally got it figured out, and even now they say you're on a tether because we didn't get it. It's still hiding, and it does come back, and it puts me in the emergency room until we get it leveled out again. But I got to thinking later, and in the journals you'll see where it says, I know I have to make a decision. I have to relinquish Project Cure. I must become less in order for Project Cure to become greater. If I try to hold on to it myself, I've got to relinquish it. I've got to let it go, or I will take it down with me when I go. And so Doug came on, our son. He's an attorney and also has another PhD in econometrics and finance, and he's running and doing a great job as president and CEO of Project Cure. But if they say now, if you're off in Kulu Valley in northern India someplace, and this hits you, you'll never make it back to the airplane. But I have thought about that now. That is so cool. That is so cool, because I was doing all the needs assessments, and the restriction was we never would send anything anyplace, which meant I had to go do some more and some more and some more and some more and some more. And the good Lord knew, Bucko, you're not taking this baby down. And I'm thinking now, well, when Anna Marie started traveling with me, I'm kind of the entrepreneur. She's kind of the research person. And so she would carry this notepad with her all the time, and we'd go into a meeting with maybe the president of the country or a newspaper interview or something, and we'd come out and she'd say, "You've said the last 3 times exactly word for word. Why do you say that?" And I would say, "'Cause." She said, "'Cause is not an answer." I said, well, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm at point A and I have to get to C and I got to go through point B. Well, I didn't have the patience. I didn't have patience enough to write down or train somebody else to do what I do, because if I needed to get to the president, I could get to the president. If I needed whatever I'd do it. She started writing all of this stuff, all the protocol, all the logistics. And so when I got sick, she was ready with a 125-page training manual. She went down to the office and started training. She trained 20 to 25 people to do what I was doing. And I look back at that and I say, what an incredible miracle. I wanted to let loose. I'm not smart enough to. The good Lord helped me let loose this thing, because now we have 20, 25 people going out doing what I was doing, which allows it to multiply and get bigger and longer. So when she says, our basic belief is, we're not in control of this thing. God's in control, and if we try to negate that or to block or alter or hinder that, then we will get ourselves in trouble. But if we roll with it and say, this is cool, this works, and it's all for the better. So I've run over my time. I'm sorry, but you can tell. Okay, yeah, more questions.
Yep. Oh, no, go ahead.
I have a couple of questions that
Yes.
are unrelated. One is, how long, if you look at a journal section and then you just see one incident that you want to write your story about, or does it take a while to condense a big section of journal?
No, so by the time I got through doing the synopsis is probably about a 2-page for every one of the trips. Then I would highlight, if it was a story I wanted to remember where it was, because you have to be careful. Did that happen in Romania or was that Kyrgyzstan? There's some, and to go through, and so that became my reference point. So
You have a synopsis in there.
pardon?
You have a synopsis in there.
Oh yeah, I do. It's in the photo journal. I should have known. But it looks kind of like this, and you can see the highlights. That's the only way I could get my arms around it. So in my mind, I might remember, ooh, that's a good story for that, or as an example of gratitude, and then I would have to go back through and locate it. So it's a good question. Sometimes I remember specifically. Other times it was a like a trip into Lagos, where I almost got killed. But I would remember that, and that would help me. So there's a lot. The journals are the real story of the last 26 years, because in the stories I'm eclectic and I pick out, but in the journal, all the way over there, I'm trying to record what has happened and the miracle about getting this warehouse here and there, or Coors giving me a forklift, or somebody doing this, or something magnificent, and I try to do that. But the thing I do in the journals is I reflect. I have time while I'm riding on a 30-hour airplane trip, into Mongolia or something. I do have time to think it through and express my feeling, what I'm feeling about this. And I don't know how the journals are going to go over, because I'm kind of open about it. If I'm angry at a guy in customs or something that's trying to steal my load, or hold it hostage because I have a time dated expiration date on something, and so they take my whole $450,000 worth of stuff and start charging me $1,000 or $2,000 a day demurrage charge, and just to hold it hostage. I mean, those kinds of things. So there's some little dicey things in there. I don't know if I want to live with, but they're in there.
So that answers my second question. I work part-time in a business where we end up, if someone has either died or they're trying to downsize, and we donate a lot of stuff to Project Cure, and I'm pretty skeptical about this idea of outdated medical supplies. To me, they're just all synthetic chemicals. They should last forever, and I don't see why we can't bring in the stuff that's maybe a little out of date.
Oh, I need you. The whole concept of dating on medical stuff is marketing. It's marketing. If you can outdate it and get it out of everybody's shelves, they have to buy more to put back in. So it's a huge industry. It's huge. And to complicate it even more, we're running worldwide competition with producers of medicines from India, China, places. I had a friend who bought some knockoff Tylenol and was taking it back through customs, and in one of these countries. And they said, "What is this?" And he says, "Tylenol." "Where'd you get it?" "We got it from India." And so they said, "Well, we're going to test it." He said, "Fine, do what you want to do with it." And so they tested. You know what it was? Talcum powder. He was what they were buying internationally, thinking that it was ibuprofen or something, was talcum powder. So it really is a huge problem. I have suggested even places like North Korea. I said, there's plenty, and like you're saying, chemical is chemical. And what you need to do in your country is to set up a testing station of your own. Then if you want to extend the expiration date, that's your problem. But it's going to come to something like that, because these other companies now, from Asia and whatnot, the African market is huge, and it's very tempting, it's alluring. And so they go in there and get to the ministers of health and say, you know what those Americans do? The reason why that date's on there, because you used up one day after that, and it's designed to kill you. They hate you. And so you're fighting all of this kind of stuff. But we came, it was in Romania, my first, and it would have been about 1992 or 3. And they tried to hijack some of my stuff. And I just came to the point we were not going to put pharmaceuticals in our big loads of $450,000 worth of stuff in a container, so that nobody was going to hold us hostage. So now our medical teams take the medicine with them, and we try to stay away from the chemicals that are dated so that there's not a problem. But on the surface, Project Cure looks like it's kind of a simple operation, which I got caught up in it as an economist. Here is all of this where you're doing incredible research and development. So what do you have? Of course, if you have good research and development, you have second generation. And it's as good as anything last Tuesday was sliced bread. It's great stuff. It'll save lives. Well, what are you going to do with it when you have it in your warehouse? You can't sell on eBay. You can't sell. What are you going to do with it? So that was my approach. Okay, you have all of this overstock, and over here you have this incredible black hole of people dying because of what this is, and it's. Why hasn't somebody seen how to put it from here and take it over here? It seemed pretty clear to an economist. Then I got into it. I'm thinking, this is pretty complicated. The stats are 40% of everything that leaves the United States, humanitarian, never makes it where it's supposed to go. So I'll be up along the old Silk Road and I'll see in the marketplaces stuff that has been sent out of New York or something, and it's stolen. That's the way they do their stuff. I know we're going to get hit one of these days, but in the 25, almost 30 years now of Project Cure, we have not lost one container. That's a miracle. My not getting sick all those years, that's a miracle. So there are some pretty incredible things that have happened, but yes.
So if you could leave us with one piece of advice for all of us as we walk out of here tonight, what would that be?
Well, the thing that's been on my mind that I think I'm leaving my thumbs on the scale when I'm saying this. I realize that, but I think to personalize and evaluate who you are and where you are, and if you need to articulate it, write it down. To try it, because that's really important. It's important to the people that are around you, who are watching you and depending on you, and so my feeling is reevaluate the concept of the power of the story. Your story is significant. Your story is powerful. There are people who need to learn and can be helped by your story. And if it's and a lot of us think, well, yeah, that's just me though. I don't have anything. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Think about it. Try to articulate it, and be willing, be vulnerable, open, as to what your story is, because you can help. And I think in these days we need some authenticity. We need some people who are vulnerable. We need some people who are encouragers, who will help along in the times ahead of us. And I think we need to say, okay, I may not be CEO of anything. I may not be, but I have a story. I have a story, and be willing to sit on a bar stool or something and want to tell your story. I didn't mean that. That's silly. Thank you for allowing us to just kind of relax and be vulnerable and let you. And Jonathan, thank you, my friend.
Do you mind if I ask one more question here?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the book, The Happiest Man in the World, covers a lot of the history of Project Cure, and if you've read that, or when you do read it, it's amazing, because Project Cure is like where miracles happen, right? Just resources and people coming together over and over and over again. So my question is, what is it in your mindset, your attitude, your expectation, your relationship to God that makes Project Cure such a miracle magnet?
I think part of it is I'm willing to relinquish it. And when you're willing to get your hands off of something, there's the little boy with the loaves and fish. There are a lot of things he could have done with that. Number one, eating them himself. But he was willing to let it loose. And I think that's part of Project Cure. And when you see that, when it's basic economics, from an economic standpoint, I can defend it. When you are bent on helping the other person become better off, I mean seriously, if your motivation is to help somebody else if you can make their life better, if you on purpose go out and say, this is my friend, I'm going to help them this. I've been stung before. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying being vulnerable enough to say, I'm willing to help you be better off. How can I do that? I learned that in a business, if you really wanted the deals to stick together, make sure everybody is better off. And I think then the other thing is I couldn't do. I think God was looking. You know, there's an old verse in 1 Chronicles 69. It says, the eyes of the Lord go to and fro, back and forth across the face of the earth, seeking to find a people whose hearts are perfect toward him, so that he can do his mighty miracles through them. Oh, what a formula. You know, you go, if that's true, that would really work. And I think God is saying, there's some people here in Somalia, there are people in Buenos Aires, there's some people here and there that I really love. If I could help somebody, if I could find somebody in my going to and fro, back and forth across the face of the earth, seeking to find, if my eyes could focus on somebody to do it, why wouldn't I want to help them, help the people that I love? So to me, that's part of it, being willing to relinquish it. I have to say, as an economist, it thrills me. We run Project Cure on less than 2% overhead. Anna Marie and I have never taken any money, any salary, anything out of Project Cure in the last nearly 30 years. Nothing. We've paid our own ways most of the time and all that kind of stuff. But when the Forbes say that Project Cure is in the top 25 not-for-profit corporations in the United States, I go, huh. And when Charity Navigator gives us 5-star rating and with their formula say that Project Cure is the fourth best nonprofit in the United States, I go, that's not me. I'm not smart enough to do it. That's a miracle. That's fun. Thanks for listening. Thank you again, Brad.
Honey,
Yes.
why don't you give the old ancient economist formula?
She knows I love it. I see the old guy 605 BC. His name was Jeremiah. I declare he was an economist, because the only thing that an economist is worth anything for is that they want you to foretell, right? They want you to forecast what's going to happen in the future. It's the only thing. That's why they have charts and graphs and all this kind of stuff. And so I see Jeremiah as really a neat economist, and he studies life. And his job was to go about the country and size up and then predict. Now, if you were one of those guys and the prediction was good and it came out right, you got to keep your job. If you didn't, you lost your head. So after he had done his entire...
We wouldn't have any more economists.
No, well, that's not bad. On the other hand, yeah, she had warts. No, and but here, after he had done all of his interviews and all of that kind of stuff, here's what he said: "Let not the wise man boast of his wisdom. Let not the strong man boast of his strength. Let not the wealthy man boast of his riches. But let him who would boast of this, that he knows and understands me, that I am the God who exercises kindness, justice, and righteousness on this earth. And in these things I delight, saith the Lord of hosts." If you want to put a smile on God's face, kindness, justice, and righteousness with every breath you breathe and every hour that you got left. That's good economics. Is that what you wanted? All right. She knows I'm an economist. Thank you. Anna Marie's got some specials back there. Oh, I think you're going to like what they did. They put those two books, Love and Common Sense and Simplicity and Sophistication, together in a slip cover. I like it. But anyway, you can't have those. We will have them about May 15th, and you can order them now. And she's got some specials back there.
This is the slipcase.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And the two, yeah.
Thank you.
So
Makes a great gift. The one is the happiest man in the world gets you started, because that tells everything. And then the stories.
Thank you.
So you're gonna take orders?
I'll take, yes,